years that actually drive this process that you could assess the condition of watersheds around the world. And so drawing on biophysical, biological, and socioeconomic data, and scalable from basins up to the global scale, and from that kind of get a measure of the ecological health, the ecosystem service health, and hence the ecological health of a basin at any particular time. And I think that's probably, and then this is just sort of summarising what I just said. So what we could get from a graph. So I'll stop there. That's just an outline of some of the things that we've been doing, some potential resources that we could develop for the future. So if anyone has we have like time for a question if anyone has them. Otherwise, okay, then we can go on to the next presentation. So now I think we're going to get into some more detailed tools, and so Emily from the USDA Forest Services will tell us about a specific tool, the Forester Foresight.
Thanks, Ian. So let's see. Okay, so in a 2011 poll by the Nature Conservancy showed that 75% of Americans didn't know where their water comes from. Although we've got this sophisticated public water system that delivers water right to our tap, it's meant that the average American doesn't need to think past their water bill for the source of their water. And it's also created a disconnect between the upstream supply of water and the downstream use of water. Today I'll just give an overview of an effort at the Forest Service to visualize this connection between the supply and demand of drinking water, and it's called the Forester Faucets. And I'll conclude by talking about some applications of this work for payment for watershed services in the United States. So in the United States, about 75% of the country supplies surface drinking water to U.S. citizens. So that's a lot of land to protect. How do we figure out which areas might be most important, and how do we make this connection between forest and faucets clearer? And so the project objectives for forest faucets are three. First, identify sub-watersheds most important to surface drinking water quality. Look at the role that forests play in protecting these areas, and then look at the extent to which these forests are threatened by development, insects and disease, and wildland fire. So to get to the first objective, we created a watershed index that includes three components. First, the number of surface drinking water components, and this is based on the intake locations where the water is drawn out of streams to provide drinking water. And in this map, you can see the green dots are groundwater intakes, and the red dots are surface water intakes. So it's important to note that as we're going through and looking at all these map outputs, it's only looking at the surface drinking water. The second component is a model of surface water flow and distance to each sub-watershed, to the intake. And this shows the importance of not only the areas right around the intake, but the upstream areas. And this is really what we want to get to. And then third, it incorporates a model of water supply to account for the countrywide differences in water supply. So the results of this, this first step, the watershed index, are here on this map. The dark blue areas show those areas that are most important for surface drinking water according to our model. And here, the red areas show the top 5% of important areas. These are the hot spots for importance for surface drinking water. And you can see some trends, you know, across the East Coast, there's a lot more red areas. This is in part due to the fact that there's higher population densities in some of these areas and higher reliance on surface drinking water rather than groundwater. And you also see hotspots in California that applies to San Francisco and some other hotspots in the Pacific Northwest and in the middle of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. And so when we incorporate the land use data and look at the forest areas, we get this second map. And it shows the extent to which all forests are currently protecting areas of surface drinking water importance. So it really hones in on the forest areas. And for this third step, we look at 3 different threats. First, development, and we use data from the forest on the edge, projected housing density increase to 2030. And that's, the raw data is in the top map up here. And then secondly, wildland fire, and third, insects and disease. And so when we incorporate the step 2 results with the threats data, we get the maps on the bottom. So the darker green and blue areas show forest areas that are important for surface drinking water and also highly threatened by each of these threats. So when we pull all this information together, we get this map. And the map in the back with the grayscale are those forests important for surface drinking water. And on top, we have the hotspot areas for the 3 different threats. The yellow for insects and disease, the purple for development, and red for wildland fire. And you know, by putting them all on the same map, we can start to see interesting patterns. One thing I like to point out in California, we see this banding of threats along the Sierra Mountains. Let's see if I can. So moving from west to east, we see a band of purple representing development, and then wildland fire, and then on the eastern side, insects and disease. So, you know, not only can this start to paint the broad brushstrokes pictures of where the important areas are, but it might also help us look at which management techniques might be most relevant for different landscapes. And you know, we focused on these 3 threats, but we found partners of ours interested in using our data and overlaying different threats. And so this is a, you know, very versatile to incorporate other threats data. And folks have also been interested in using some of the base layers in their own decision support tools, multi-criteria decision support tools, and so that can be done. And within the Forest Service, folks have been interested in using it in state forest action plans, in the hazardous fuels priority allocation system, and the wildland fire decision support system. So helping make those management decisions, and you're just using this as one more criteria and helping inform that decision. But another application of this data is for potential siting of payment for watershed services projects. And so, you know, when we think about payment for watershed services projects, 3 criteria that you know, stand out as being really important are these 3. So first, consumer demand for the clean water and willingness to pay. And we get at that with the Forest Deposits Project by looking at the number of consumers at each intake. And then second, a clear connection between the forest management and drinking water. And we get at this by incorporating the forest land use data. And then third, a threat to the existing watershed services that could be avoided or averted through payment. And we get at this through looking at the threats. And we found, at least in several cases in the United States, that having this threat provides an urgency for action, and so has been a key in getting some of these set up. So if we flip back to the final map here, let's just look and see what some of the efforts have been happening in the United States thus far. So these 4 areas are areas where EPA has their avoided filtration permit areas. So EPA has said to these areas, you can either build a very expensive filtration plant, or you can use natural infrastructure methods and watershed management to get to the same water quality output. So these are areas that have done that, used a natural approach rather than building costly water filtration plants. And then this next set are areas where the Forest Service has been working with water utilities or local cities in developing a public-private partnership for watershed management. And so, a common model here is partnership between the Forest Service and a water utility or city to reduce fire risk. And so you can see here, just to get a picture of what this might look like, the area here, can't quite tell in the picture, but this area is greener forest. This area is had a very severe or hot burning fire, and this wasn't treated and this was treated. So by doing some basic forest management treatments, we can really make an impact on water quality based on the siltation that might come in after a fire. And this has been the most relevant threat in these 3 cases. And then there are a number of other efforts across the United States that are taking innovative approaches for watershed management. And some of these are highlighted in yellow here. And I'll just give a quick example from Oregon. This has been a recent effort that's been widely successful. It's temperature trading, and so EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has set standards on water temperature because of sensitive fish species, and so the regulated entity here in the picture has a choice between building very expensive chilling facilities, to basically a really large refrigerator where the hot water comes in and gets cooled. Or what's happening here in Oregon is that they're doing a lot of streamside tree plantings, and this is a natural infrastructure approach to cooling the water temperature, and has been really successful in doing that. And it's just this one regulated facility has brought $10 million of new conservation dollars to this area. So they're really excited about expanding this model throughout the state and the Pacific Northwest, bringing in many more $1 million of new conservation funding. And so, you know, I'll just leave you with this image, and I think the most useful part about this project is just to get us thinking about what is happening across the country, and where of these hotspots can we do more work and create innovative solutions. And if folks are interested in looking at the methods more in depth, or looking at some of the map outputs, you can check it out on this website. We have a bunch of links on our website, and then we also have all the data in arcgis.com, so you can zoom in and out and add other layers on top of it, and see different areas. So, and I'm not sure how for time, but if there are any questions? Quick questions?
Actually, I have a quick question. So it looks really interesting, and you're dealing with areas which are extremely data rich. So will it be easy to take this and this model and apply it in places where you have less data?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, our intention for this was to provide a pretty quick and easy analysis across the country, just so that we can have consistent data across the country. There have been a lot of localized efforts in some states where they have a lot of really good data, but we found that there wasn't a good data set for, you know, important areas for surface drinking water that incorporate the upstream forested area. But yeah, like I said in the presentation, there's 3 main components to incorporate. So as long as you have the locations of the intakes and the number of people that are served, you know, you could do that, and just basic flow analysis. But you know, also we encourage folks to you know, use this and to get an idea of where you might want to focus in more. So within the United States, folks have used it in that way as well, and identifying some of those hotspots, and then using you know, localized data that might be better quality when they can. But yeah, I encourage folks from other countries that want to look into the methods. We have a methods paper on this on the website, and feel free to contact me as well. My contact is on the website as well, or I have cards afterward.
I'm Alan Watson. I'm a U.S. Forest Service research scientist. So thank you, Emily. That was a good question also, Ian, thinking about we're data rich in the U.S. But we wanted to, as we start this second hour, kind of moving towards discussion and thinking about opportunities and solutions, we asked a couple of folks that we're working with in the U.S., a couple of our partners, to come talk about some of the challenges, maybe in working across boundaries, taking a more continental approach to particularly protecting freshwater resources. No, I'm sorry, Vance is going to speak for it. Yeah, we called it a panel, but I'm not sure we have remote controls, but how about we ask Vance to come up and speak first. He's the president of the Wild Foundation, and he's been partnering with our government agencies and helping us bridge larger in North America to some of our to other North American countries. We asked him to talk about the challenges he's finding in that endeavor.
That's fine. And is this the click to the
Yeah, well, can you change it?
No, I'm quite happy. So okay. Hi. I've got a couple of slides to show. I was explaining earlier that you know, Alan and I have worked together for years, and I was the Wild Foundation does a lot of you know, we're a small group, but we've worked internationally way beyond our budget for many years, trying to work at the interface of some natural resource issues and human communities based around wild nature. wilderness at the core, and one of those big issues is always fresh water. But I'll be very clear from the beginning, I'm not a scientist, but I have a very close and long relationship with fresh water. I drink it every day, just like everybody else. So that's the extent of my, it's a personal relationship. So every 4 years we do something called the World Wilderness Congress, and as well as a number of other things, but this is one of our flagship projects. This was Wild 9, as we called it, met in Mexico, in Mérida, in the Yucatan, 2009. It was opened by President Calderon. It's very much a parallel process to the international protocols. It's a public-private sort of partnership. Everybody's invited, and we tackle issues. We have practical outcomes, and we celebrate. We look for positive solutions. We all know how bad things are, so why pound it into the ground? Let's try to find some positive solutions and to generate some hope as well. At Wild